Hi everybody, this is Natalie with Champion of Coins Tarot. I hope that you all are doing very well today. I am here to share my response to Lisa Papez's 21 Tarot Questions hashtag. I am late to the party on this tag as well. It's been a crazy month, so I am taking these precious wee hours in the morning to batch film a bunch of tag responses, so do bear with me. I thought that this was going to be very fun because the questions are so wide-ranging that I was able to pull both some of my favorites, which I featured a lot on the channel and that I've been actively using this year, along with some of the deep cuts in like the Champion of Coins archives. So I'm excited to go ahead and to just jump right in. The first question is, what is the deck that they'll have to pry out of your cold, dead hands? For me, no question, that's the Babylonian Tarot. This is an out-of-print deck. It was originally published by Llewellyn in 2005, and it's very expensive now. And I had eBay alerts on. I was looking through Etsy, looking through Facebook Marketplace for months trying to locate this, and I finally found one within my price range. And I am absolutely in love with it. I've been using it for the Deck and Walk. I used it and the Marielle Tarot together to go through the exercises for the Decans of Aries, and it's everything I wanted it to be and more. This also speaks to my love of mythology and of learning about the religious traditions of the ancient Near East. Oh man, there's our girl. It's just so wonderful. I love this deck so much, and this is definitely my holy grail deck, so I'm not going to give it up without a fight. Next is, what is your guilty pleasure deck? This is easily the Wizard's Tarot. So this is an independently published deck. It is very much in this cartoonish style that's very reminiscent of like Rick and Morty, Futurama, The Simpsons. It's just so out there. And all of the suits, with the exception of swords, have been changed. And so I have no idea what it's talking about half the time because it doesn't come with a guidebook. There are some elements of the Rider-Waite-Smith symbolism in there, but they're often swapped amongst cards. So this is very much like a 10 of Swords image for me, but it's on the 5 of Swords. And then I have no idea what's going on with beasts at all. I'm pretty sure it's wands, so this would be the Queen of Wands, but who knows? That being said, it is so much fun. It's absolutely irreverent, it's gory, it's just so of its time. It's such a relic of 2017. So I really love it for the nostalgia factor, for sure. So that's the Wizard's Tarot. The next question is, what's the deck you wish existed? I have no idea. I'm sure that in time we will have a Lady Gaga tarot deck in the same style that we have the Starman Tarot. But until that day, I think that the market is so oversaturated that there's nothing aside from maybe some fandom decks that are still uncreated, like that still have not been brought to fruition yet. I know for me personally, I am planning on creating my own oracle deck that's just for myself and for my sister to use with the photos of our ancestors on it, so that way we can have them on the altar, and that way we can actually like go one step beyond working with the tarot court cards to be able to identify spirits of communication. We can actually just have the photograph or the painting of the relative. So that's something that I'm working on, but that's just for personal use. I honestly think that there are so many decks that, I don't know. If it doesn't exist now, it definitely will exist at some point. Question 4, what deck would you give to a new reader? That is easily Tarot of the Magical Forest. So even though this was not my first tarot deck, this was my third, and it's the one that I really learned the Rider-Waite-Smith system with. I absolutely love it. It has such a playful energy, and the animals are deceptively cute. Like, they lure you in thinking that it's going to be a really light and a really fluffy deck and it's not going to be substantive, but it absolutely is so powerful. Like, this is just such a great deck that can bridge both the practical and the spiritual worlds, and it's very, very approachable, and it doesn't have kind of the harshness of the Rider-Waite-Smith images. It's very muted. It has like this lovely watercolor kind of pastel palette to it. So this was one of my fundamental beginner decks, and I would absolutely recommend it for anybody who's getting into tarot today as well. All right, I have these questions on my phone and it keeps locking me out. So I'm trying to do my best here to keep it moving. Number 5, what deck do you want to get along with, but it just never clicked? I have a few decks that fall into that category, but the main disappointment for me was the Star Power Tarot. This is by the same creator who did the Moon Power Tarot, and this is the really maximalist, vibrant, crazy sister deck to that one. I wanted it because, I mean, it's an acid trip in a deck, and it's very much my aesthetic. But that being said, I just don't feel anything when I read with it. It functions fine. I feel like this one does have more of a logical interpretation of the traditional tarot symbolism than, say, the Wizard's Tarot might. It's beautiful to look at. I just don't feel anything. I don't get anything with it. And so it's in purgatory right now, and I think it might be time to release it. Which is a shame, because on an artistic level, I like it, but in terms of actually being able to use it in my practice, this hasn't happened yet. I do love Laura Palmer as the Queen of Pentacles. Love Twin Peaks. So yeah, there's so much that I wish the Star Power Tarot could have been for me. Question 6, what deck do you only keep for the art? This is another independently published deck that's in my purgatory box. It is the Cosmos Tarot and Oracle. So it has the 78 tarot cards, and then it has, I want to say like 25 different oracles, and you can use them separately or you can use them together. I often have blended the deck together. Another case where I absolutely love the artwork, and I have held on to this deck for 5 years, 5.5 years, because I will pull it out once a year and I will try to read with it, or I will try to explore the astrological associations with this deck. And the truth is that they just don't match up with tarot, and they also don't match up with the internal logic of this deck itself. So every single minor arcana card is a constellation, but oftentimes the element that I would associate with that constellation, like if you look at the toucana, for example, this to me should be air because it's a bird, but it's not, and it doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't know, maybe I'll have to like actually look at a map of the night sky and try to locate these constellations and see within what proximity they fall to the standard 12 zodiac signs, because maybe that's how they divvied up the elemental division, but it just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand it. It's beautiful, but this is another one where if I can't make it work for me, then I am going to let it go soon. All right. The next question is, what deck did you buy because everyone else did? This is super easy. That's the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot. And it's not just the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot, it's the Super Oracle and the Materia Prima Oracle. Everybody was raving about this deck when I joined YouTube in 2016 and 2017. I eventually got it in 2020. And I was really, really excited to work with it because it's absolutely beautiful. And I do think that the deck reads well. I just forget that I have it. Like, I never go and reach for this deck, even when it is part of the monthly decks that I am kind of supposed to be working with as part of my monthly practice. And I don't know, maybe it's the cardstock because I'm not really the biggest fan of linen. Or maybe it's just because this is so minimalist that it kind of gets lost amongst my other decks. But this was definitely a case where I was influenced by other people on YouTube to buy it. It's absolutely beautiful, but I don't use it. So this is another one that I really need to devote more time to, or else. Okay, the next question is, what deck is over your head or just baffles you? So that is easily the Jungian Tarot by Robert Wayne. This deck is very much a psychological approach to the tarot. It's meant to be a path-working deck. You're supposed to meditate on the image and have a dialogue with the figure that is contained therein. And I love that idea in theory. In practice, though, I have not done that. And the deck also comes with 3 different guidebooks that go into all of the symbolism, what all of the colors in the artwork mean, what their holding means. It gives a little bit of information about these very pippish elemental minor arcana cards. It's beautiful. It's something that I definitely want to study, but it's not one that I feel like I can do a big spread with. It's really a 1-card pull for me. So this is one that we will definitely have to continue studying with the Royal We. But I do think it's very beautiful. All right, next question is, what tarot deck surprised you? And that's a really easy one to answer. That's the Etruscan Tarot by Lo Scarabeo. This is another out-of-print deck that I've wanted for a very long time. I got it on the spring equinox, and this deck was just immediately claimed by my ancestors. Like, from the very first card that I pulled with it, I just knew, okay, this isn't for me, this is for my ancestors. And I've used it daily for spirit communication and for ancestral working, trying to untangle some of the mysteries and some of the patterns, both beneficial and harmful, in my own family line. And it's just been so, so powerful. And I definitely didn't get the deck with that purpose in mind. That is just how it immediately presented itself and associated itself to me, which is really beautiful. I love it so much. So that was the Etruscan Tarot. The next question is, what deck doesn't really work for you, but you keep it because it's a collectible? That is Egyptios Cure. This is another out-of-print deck that is very, very expensive, and I actually got it for free because a former partner of mine worked at a used bookstore and somebody donated it. And it just crazy, just absolutely crazy. And so I've held on to it because it's rare, because I don't really have any other decks that speak to ancient Egyptian mythology. I love how these are adapted from actual ancient Egyptian artwork that's in tombs or that is on different stelae and things like that. This isn't really a tarot though. This is very much an oracle deck because there are no suits. The major arcana numbers 0 through 21 definitely correspond with the traditional tarot. Like, you can see the moon here, and you have like the Hebrew letter association, all that good stuff with it, but it just goes in its completely own esoteric direction. So this is one that is powerful, but is also kind of confusing for me to work with. And I actually do wonder what it would be like paired with She-Wolf. I even wonder what this would be like paired with the Isis Oracle by Alana Fairchild. I can't believe that I haven't done that yet. So, I don't know. We shall see. The verdict is still out on that one. Then the next question is, what deck is your favorite gilded deck? That is, speaking of the devil, that's the She-Wolf Tarot. It has just this absolutely sumptuous rose gold gilding to it that matches the artwork, that matches the aesthetic of the deck. It's really great, and it's also very much upside down. But yeah, this is one of my top decks of all time. I included it in my top 10 indie decks video response that I did today. It's just really amazing, and I love it a lot. Okay, next is, which deck do you love but hate the cardstock? That is the Mythical Goddess Tarot. I rant about this cardstock all the time because it really just is cardboard, and I worry about how it's going to hold up over time. That being said, this deck is so unconditionally loving and so powerful and transformative and healing in the best possible way. This has really become one of my most used decks since I got it for Hanukkah, and I really couldn't imagine my practice without it. This has definitely helped me to get more in touch with my own femininity, to be able to connect with the divine feminine face of God and what that kind of looks like for myself and my practice. And it just is so diverse. It really celebrates different body types, folks of different ability. Of course, you have different goddesses and figures from world mythology. And it's very strongly elementally based. It also has a lot of artwork depicting various chakras, which is also really amazing and creates very powerful parallels in regards to what energy is being activated at various points in a spread. So I love this one, and I am willing to overlook the awful thick cardstock that it has. All right, the next question is, what deck gives you the willies? That is the Demon Tarot. And I am cheating here because this is not a tarot deck. This is an oracle deck. But because it has tarot in the name, it is staying. And this is one of my absolute favorites, even though it does freak me out sometimes. This is a deck that is a direct adaptation of the Infernal Grimoire, which was an 18th century Goetic text. And it has the name of the demon, the description of the demon, a little bit of information about them, and then the guidebook goes much more into detail about how that demon would have been perceived in 18th century culture. And this deck is so accurate. It feels fiery, it feels like it is its own living entity. And so even though I tend not to try to personify my decks as much, or at least not to ascribe like the power of a particular tarot reading or a particular message to the deck as opposed to like the intuition or the spirit work that I'm doing, this deck is in a league all of its own. This deck has some level of sentience. I definitely cleansed it when I got it. I have definitely had to do some energy work around it to kind of keep it happy. Which is weird to say, but it really doesn't pull any punches. It very much has a mind and a will of its own. And in that regard, I think that this is a more true representation of demonic energy than the Fallen Angels Oracle, which is another darker themed demon deck that I absolutely love. And that one I do use daily because I don't think that it's connected with that kind of energy at all. It's like a much more psychological model, and then this is like the primal force. It's crazy. So that's the Demon Tarot. Next is, what is your favorite tarot deck for shadow work? And that is easily, hands down, Ludi Lescott. This is sadly out of print, but this, in my opinion, is the best dark themed deck, vampire themed deck out there. I rank this above Tarot Vampires. I rank this above Deviant Moon. This is it for me. It is raw, it's sexual, it's primal, but it also is so watery. And when I work with this, it really is about being able to fully feel my feelings. I see myself reflected in a lot of these cards. I see people in my life reflected in these cards. I love how powerful this artwork is. And this is one where definitely it makes me feel something every single time I pick it up. It's really indispensable for shadow work. All right, I think the next question is, what is a deck you love in theory but not in practice? That for me is Tarot of the Divine. So I do really enjoy multicultural decks. I wanted to love this deck very much because it represents different myths, different folk tales from around the world, and has this very diverse perspective. It has this absolutely beautiful art style. The cardstock is horrible. It feels like linen, but it's not linen. It's like the Mythical Goddess Tarot if they had put like a linen stamp on it. It just feels very hard and very coarse to the touch. So I really don't like that. And despite the beauty of the images, I don't feel anything from this deck. And it's also, the person who gave me the deck is a person who is not in my life anymore, for a very good reason. And so this is also just kind of like layers of both tactile sensation, a lack of connection, a lack of being able to get a logical message out of it when reading, and then also those negative personal associations around the giving of the deck. So I want to love this one, but it is in purgatory and it very likely is going to be moving on, sadly. I think I just have other multicultural decks that do the same thing and that work a lot better for me. All right, the next question is, what deck would you never use to read for someone else? Easy money. That's the Danny Loft Tarot. The Danny Loft Tarot is my own personal magical deck. I use this for ritual, for manifestation, for spellcrafting, and solely for that. I don't use it as a standard tarot deck anymore. This is really a magical tool. And thus, by default, no one ever will get a reading from me using this deck because it's so intensely personal. Conversely, what is the deck that you would never use for yourself? And I definitely have used this for myself, but it's not my go-to. This actually is my go-to deck for other people. That's the Wild Unknown. And you can also file this under decks that I got because everybody else got it. When I tell you the chokehold that the Wild Unknown had over all of us when it came out mass market in 2016, unbelievable, unbelievable. This deck is a very clear reader. It's very honest. Sometimes it can verge on being brutally honest, but it's kind of like the kick in your pants empowerment that you need to get up and to get moving. And I found that this deck is much better about allowing me to channel information, energy, and messages for other people in my life because it's so stark and so simplistic. And I also find that a lot of people just really resonate with this energy because aside from the Rider-Waite-Smith, this is a deck that a lot of people who don't read tarot associate tarot with in their minds. So this is a good reader for other people. I'm glad that I have it. It definitely still has a place in my collection, but it's not one that I'm really reaching for and doing personal readings for myself. All right. The next question is, what deck could you not bring yourself to buy? This is easy. It's the Ritual Tarot. I'm not going to buy the Ritual Tarot because I already have the Ritual Tarot at home. That's the Voyager Tarot, which is one of my all-time favorite decks. Like the Danny Loft, this is also another deck that I have done spell work with, but I've also like meditated with these cards. I've journeyed with them. I use this very heavily for my dream work practice. This deck does everything that Ritual Tarot could do for me and more. And it has a better guidebook and it has better cardstock and it's mass market. And it goes on sale all the time on Amazon. You know what I mean? Like, even though this aesthetically feels a little bit more dated, this is definitely a product of the 80s, a product of its time. I find that it still contains so much profound wisdom. It has so much to offer me, and I'm constantly uncovering something new every single time that I work with it. So yeah, I honestly don't really feel inspired to buy any other collage decks because I have this deck and because I love it so deeply and so intensely. It's just the absolute best. All right, the next question is, what is your favorite pip deck? And for those of you who know me, you know that I am a shameless shill for the Golden Tarot by Liz Dean. This is my first tarot deck. It is my favorite tarot deck of all time. If I only had one tarot deck for the rest of my life, hands down, it would be the Golden Tarot. As much as I love all of the other ones, this is the deck that I have the strongest emotional connection and intuitive relationship with. And I'm never without it. This means so, so much to me. This is a kind of reimagining of the Visconti Sforza Tarot, which of course is the precursor to the Marseille and thus to all kind of modern decks. And it does retain that kind of medieval or Renaissance style. But I love how elemental it is. I love how soft it is. I love how there's so much detail packed into the backgrounds and into the faces of all of the people in the deck. Really just aesthetically and also energetically, this is everything I've ever wanted in my entire life. So I love it to pieces. Not only my favorite pip deck, but also my favorite deck of all time. And I will never shut up about it. It's gonna be in every single video. And if I ever do a video and the Golden Tarot is not in it, you know that something is wrong. You know that I'm being held against my will. Being facetious, of course. The next question is, what deck slaps you with the truth? That is definitely Tarot of the Ages. This is another deck that I use for shadow work. This is one of the earliest multicultural decks. This was published by US Games in, let's see here, 1988. So this is definitely the precursor to Tarot Illuminati and Tarot Apocalypsis and Tarot of the Divine. I love it. This deck definitely has that kind of ancient energy to it. It's very wise. It's a very strong kind of masculine presence, and it's very good about getting to the heart of a situation for good or for bad, and for revealing the message that I need to hear but that I don't always want to hear. So this deck has been very important to my own personal healing journey. And like the Ludi Lescott, this is another one that's really indispensable for me in terms of my shadow work practice. So that's Tarot of the Ages. And then the last question, y'all, is what is the deck that got away? And I wasn't sure how to answer this. I wasn't sure if this is the deck that I just didn't purchase in time and it went out of print, or if this is a deck that I had and then got rid of. So I am going to give you both of those answers. The first deck that got away, that went out of print, was the Blood Moon Tarot. And I had no idea that the Blood Moon Tarot existed until people started reselling it for $150. I love the artwork in that deck. It has a lot of snake representation, and snake is my spirit guide, and I just know that I would absolutely love that deck, but I'm going to hold out and wait for it to either get a second printing or to go mass market, because I'm not going to pay that much money for a deck. And then for decks that were in my own collection that I sold or that I gifted, I gave away my copy of the Russian Tarot of St. Petersburg. And sometimes I still think about it, because that deck was like a wise grandfather in terms of energy if I had to personify it. I brought it with me when I studied abroad in Israel. That was the only deck that I took that summer. And I read for myself. I read for the friends that I made in Israel. I read for my classmates during that semester. And it has so many memories associated with it. And even though I know that that deck is in good hands because I gave it away to a friend, I still think about it sometimes, and I still wish that I had it for nostalgia's sake, even though by that point I had not used it for several years after I had returned to the United States. So those are my answers to Lisa Papez's 21 Tarot questions. Please let me know what you thought down below if you have any of these decks and you resonated with my experience. I think that this was a little more chaotic and a little more rambly than usual, but that's because I've been awake since 3 in the morning and I really need to go back to sleep. So thank you so much as always for listening. I deeply appreciate each and every one of you. I really just appreciate you so much. And as always, I am sending you much love along your own path. Bye.